things that are supposed to be 400 million years old. Of course, I don't believe in those ages, but still, they're getting sea creatures. They're finding that there's still soft tissue in these things. But soft tissue, it can be carbon dated. It can be, you can probably find DNA in there, and whether or not it's degraded or if they find a whole sequence, that's another question. But it is there. I mean, anytime you get soft tissue, there's DNA there of some sort. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the answer to the question is they're getting more sophisticated all the time. More and more things being dug up all the time, and there are mummified dinosaurs in the museum there in New York City, the American Museum of Natural History. There's at least one mummy in there of a hadrosaur. The whole thing's there. It's a skin that looks like a dried up camel. Whole thing is there. And if they haven't tried to get DNA out of that, I would be really surprised. But some of these big museums, they kind of just, they don't always do what you wish they would do, but it's there. And I know other guys that have found mummified hadrosaurs, mummified triceratops. They're digging on a new T-Rex now. The guy just told me yesterday they got a new T-Rex. It's possible the whole thing is there. Well, if they collect it properly, keep it sealed, and then take it right to a lab, I think there's a good chance they get DNA, get close. You got red blood cells out of that T-Rex up in, I guess it's in North Dakota. There's a whole bunch of them up there. We found, soft tissue and a T-Rex hip. But it was been in a museum since 1916. I acquired a little fragment of it about as big as your thumb and sent it off to a lab, and there was collagen filament in there. And this was, not even 15, 18 years ago. Well, that same lab now is able to find soft tissue and stuff you would never dream it would be there. So they're hoping to mount a dig out in the canyon where I dig out here in Crosby County, near my hometown of Crosbyton, in what they call the Triassic red bed, supposed to be 180 million, 200 million years old. These guys said, hey, we know a certain bone. We can find it. We can get into that bone. And I said, well, I found one in all the thousands I've found one. If I can find it, you can have it to experiment with. But they said, well, you can't tell what we tell you, but we'll tell you we're onto some stuff here. And things that 5 years ago nobody would have dreamed that you could do an investigation with, It's like, elephants communicate by low frequency sound waves. There are whales that do that. Well, we don't even know how to interpret that. We know it's there. But, we've got radios. We send pictures. And we're talking right now, we're electronic radio waves, which have been around for a long time. So what else are we going to discover like a radio wave that just opens up a whole new door? It's like the Bigfoot thing. I think there's more and more research done all the time that this thing puts out some kind of vibration, I guess that's what it is, some kind of a frequency. And supposedly it puts people to sleep for 4 or 5 seconds. They just sort of, become unconscious for a bit, go into a dream state, and the animal walks away. So when they open their eyes, he's gone. It's like he disappeared. When in fact, if you close your eyes and someone walked 20 or 30 feet or 100 feet away, you open them up again, it'd be like as though they disappeared. So if they're that close on something as elusive as a Bigfoot, I don't know. The government's got technology that we don't know anything about. But if these guys in a scientific lab at a university can do some of the stuff they're doing, they're going to announce pretty soon. I think we could get DNA out of a mammoth, out of mastodon, dinosaur. I think they probably can.
Yeah, I know we've got a lot of advancements. Now, I know you said you didn't believe how old they are. I know we've talked about that before because I've done a lot of research and find a lot of, cave art and pottery that shows natives fighting pretty much a Triceratops tops and all these other dinosaurs. So are they still living? There's still some out there. Any new evidence or reports on that?
Well, you know how we still don't have a Bigfoot in custody, if you will. We get a lot more information all the time, but the okapi, that kind of giraffe-looking white and brown thing, nobody believed in those until, I don't know, 7,500 years ago. And then they've caught one now. Every major zoo has got an okapi. Same way with the lowland gorilla. I believe probably 100, 125, 150 years ago, the lowland gorilla was just a myth. Well, now, you know, he's everywhere. So several people have told me they know someone, or they saw, or their father or their friend, someone saw a living dinosaur. This lady told me one of the most fascinating stories I ever heard. No, it wasn't her, but I guess someone who knew her. They were missionaries over there in, I guess, in the Amazon jungle, way out there where you just don't see stuff. You know, I mean, you don't know what's out in the jungle. 100 feet away, there could be anything out there. You just can't see it. And she said that she was doing dishes, and I guess the dishes were in the sink. She walks in, and here's this, what looked to be like a velociraptor, a little dinosaur about 5 feet tall with a long neck on 2 legs, going through the dishes or looking at the dish or something. What does she do? She throws a blanket on it, grabs it with the neck, and throws it out. That was like throwing out a suitcase with $100 million in it.
Well, some people, Joe, don't realize, that, things could be worth money. That's, people amaze me.
If she would have just shut the door and left the thing in there, oh my gosh. Yeah, it would have been incredible. Or the other side of the story is, would the authorities, whatever that be, would they come confiscate it and you would never hear of it or see it again? That seems to happen a lot. That's what happened to the chupacabra down here in South Texas, the one that had the two paws on, or 2 fingers on the front, 3 or 4 toes on the back, and the foot shaped kind of like a human foot, although it's thinner. That thing was in a cage for 3 days. And the little Mexican lady that talked to my friend, she says, well, what I remember most about that is it flapped its wings for 3 days till it died. You go, what? Something with 4 legs, has 2 wings also, and flapped them the whole time trying to get out. So here comes the federales, and they collected it for scientific research, took it away, and told everybody to don't be talking about it. If you have video or whatever, don't be showing that to anyone. So someone made a mistake and showed my friend. Actually, they recorded a news story that got out about it. And, if you don't believe stuff like that, some people have to see something in order to believe it. Otherwise, you have to say, well, there's 10 people there that were lying. Regular old ordinary people that have nothing to gain by lying, but telling a story. They were all lying. But, no one ever proves they were lying. So there again, if that guy would have just captured that thing, and we kept it, and called, he didn't know who to call. It was just a rancher guy. He didn't know anything. But if he'd have called the right people, man, they would get down there. They'd secure that thing, study it, do all this stuff, and then if the feds got it, we'll at least know something about it. But the average person doesn't think like that. He just thinks, I need to take this to to a professor at college, or I need to call the cops or somebody. And most of that stuff, you never hear from it again, and the people don't know. They don't even know what to do with the thing. In fact, if you found a Bigfoot, what would you do with it? They weigh 800 or 900 pounds. What would you do with it?
I tell you what I would do.
I'd get it up in your pickup.
I would cut its head off, and I would cut one of his feet off and one of his hands off, and then I would call up a university and say, this is what I have. And then I would bury the remains of, but the odds are if you found a Bigfoot that was dead, for example, and you started coming out with parts of it, you might not make it out to your vehicle to get away anyway.
Well, then there's that, I probably told you that story of those hunters up there in Canada that shot one. Did I tell you that story?
Well, why don't you tell us again? Because I'm sure we got a lot of new listeners there tonight.
Well, this was a Bigfoot research guy. This a long time ago, and why he called me, I don't really know. I guess I get strange people call me, and he called and said, "Hey, man, can you raise $2,000?" I go, "No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't have money." But I knew some people that did. But at that time, well, here's the story. He said there were these two hunters up in Canada on some river. They were in a boat. They saw a bear. I guess they were hunting bear. They saw a bear and shot it, killed it, got out of the boat, went up to get their bear, and turned the thing over, and here it's a Bigfoot. They've shot and killed a Bigfoot. Well, these guys are mortified, so they went into town, rented a backhoe, got it back out there and buried the thing under, a couple of feet dug a pit and then buried it under a couple of feet of dirt. And, really didn't know what else to do. So this guy was telling me, he said, look, if we get a couple $1,000, we can rent a helicopter, fly up there to this place, get something, excuse me, get like a hand or a finger or a piece of hair or something, and then we'll know what it is. He said, but if we don't, when the spring comes, the bears will dig it up. It'll all be gone. So I said, well, okay, I hear these things get shot. They get hit by cars and all that. Well, where do they go? What happens to bodies? He said, well, apparently they dispose of their dead. And it's like, okay, well, are there graves around with markers? What do they do with them? And he didn't say it explicitly, but, there are human beings who eat each other, even the bones. I hate to say it, but there are peoples that do that, even recently, as part of their culture. So what's so strange about thinking of a large ape-like creature that has really powerful jaws, apparently, because of its size, could not just absolutely consume another Bigfoot? I mean, it's really strange, but I don't know how else would you explain. There's no bodies laying around that we know of. Not often. Although they, several have been killed. People go up to them and realize what they are, and either flee the scene, or in this case, like these guys, did bury it. Others, like one of the fellows that is volunteering in my museum, they just took off because they shot it several times. The thing kept coming at them. And I said, well, how do you know you didn't kill it? Well, we left. They were terrified. If an 8-foot tall man came after you with anger in his eyes, you'd run too.
Joe, I can tell you, because I don't remember, I told you about my experience with a friend of mine who was a medical doctor in the Canadian Rockies. Exactly. I ran faster at that point than I ever ran in my life. I didn't even think about anything other than to run away.
Well, it's kind of like an involuntary action, I think. When you fall, your hands go out. When you're terrified, your legs work better than they ever did before.
Well, you know what? A lot of people don't realize that. When people say, well, gee, why don't they get, what happens? Number one, when you see something, Bigfoot, Mothman, whatever you see, right? Your brain doesn't digest it. You go into shock, and then you get really scared, and then, you do one of two things. If you got a gun, I don't know if I would want to shoot a Bigfoot from the standpoint. I remember my uncle, when I was a little kid, ran into a bear up in Mount Shasta. Now, I'm 68. I was probably about 8 years old when that happened. And he shot that bear several times. Well, that bear lived long enough to maul him, scar him the rest of his life. And he was in the hospital for over a month. They didn't even know if he was going to live. So can you imagine if you got a gun? A lot of